From Flourish DX, this is the Psych, Health and Safety Canada podcast, with workplace mental health becoming a priority for businesses who want to retain staff and prevent burnout. This is the source of information for creating sustainable and psychologically healthy workplaces in Canada.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flourish DX Psych, Health and Safety in Canada podcast. I'm Kim MacDonald, and I'm your host. And today my guest is Dr. Duygu Gulseren, and she and I talked about her name, which is Turkish, and that I had practiced, but I'm still trying to get it right, aren't I? Gulseren. And Dr. Gulseren, I'm very excited to have you here today to talk about chronic pain and pain management and pain disability in the workplace. This is a pretty amazing and interesting topic. And my first question is always to the guest to introduce yourself a little bit and share with our listeners how your own journey and how you came to do this work that you're specializing in now.
Thank you very much for Kim having me in this podcast. I'm really excited to be here, as you can hear from my voice, probably. As you mentioned, my name is Duygu Gulseren. I am an assistant professor at the School of Human Resources Management at York University. And my area of specialization is occupational health and safety, and that's why we are our paths have crossed, and we are here today. My journey to this point. It was a long one. It's not a straightforward one for sure. My background is Turkish. I completed my undergraduate and master's degrees in Turkey. My undergraduate degree was in chemical and biological engineering. My family expected that I will work with them in our family business after my graduation. So that's why I chose a field that was closer to my family business. But I hated it. I hated every minute of studying engineering. But luckily, I was able to take psychology courses during my undergraduate degree. They were mandatory courses, but I'm glad that they were mandatory because it introduced me to a field that really excited me. I was excited. I wanted to know more. That's why I did a master's in social and organizational psychology. And that's when I was introduced to the field of occupational health and safety. So my master's thesis was about work-life balance. But I just to briefly mention, we argued that work-life balance should be about health and safety, not about meeting the demands in your job. It's not about being a perfect parent. It's not about getting all your work tasks done in a timely manner. It's about feeling well and being psychologically well. And it led me to my PhD, and I completed my PhD with Dr. Kevin Calloway, and he has made a huge impact in how I think about health and safety in the workplace. And I know he was a guest of yours in a few episodes ago. I just wanted to shout out to him. But yeah, and I with Kevin during my PhD, I came to understand that all the health and safety, not all, but the majority of the health and safety issues that we have in the workplace are, leadership is a part of it. So, and I became questioning or joined the team that questions the role of leadership and leaders' behaviors in health and safety of employees. And right now, as an independent researcher, my research program is mostly centered around chronic pain and pain disability in the workplace. And I continue to work on to understand the leader's role and importance in the workplace and with regards to occupational health and safety.
Thanks for that. That's great. Yes, Dr. Calloway's a great mentor, which I'm sure to so many students. Tell me a little bit about share, I guess, starting with the definition of chronic pain and chronic pain in the workplace, which is really, for me, very, very interesting because it intersects with a lot of the occupations and a lot of the industries that I work in, specifically in psychological health and safety. And so maybe just starting with what is the definition of chronic pain? And in Canadian workplaces, what's the degree or level? Like, is it a problem? Is it growing? Share a little bit about the context for chronic pain at work.
Of course, of course. So chronic pain is defined as, right now at least, pain that persists longer than usual healing time. So, but there are like different operational definitions. Like chronic pain is pain that persists more than 3 months. It used to be 6 months, now it's reduced to 3 months. But in essence, it is like in the past, chronic pain was viewed as an outcome of tissue damage. So if your tissues, like any part of your body, if you have a tissue damage, you feel soreness, and this is chronic pain. But like recently, researchers came to acknowledge that this is a very, very complex problem. It has social and psychological roots, and it can be a disease in and of itself. So
Mm.
it's called primary pain, or if it's a symptom of another illness, it's called secondary chronic pain. But in essence, like we came to understand that chronic pain does not have to be because of a physical damage in your body. It can be felt because your nervous system is under attack. So if you're feeling stressed, your body perceives it as an illness as well. Like it somatizes. So um, in short, chronic pain is a complex sensation. It is a very uncomfortable feeling. Um, and it can be due to several factors. It can be due to physical damage, but it can be also due to psychological damage.
Is it increasing in workplace, or I guess in the population? Are we seeing an increase in chronic pain?
We are seeing a very serious increase in chronic pain. Well, I mean, stats, and I think I forgot to answer that part of your previous question, but statistics say that 1 in every 5 Canadians, adult working age Canadians, are suffering from chronic pain. But I think like recent statistics, or like future statistics, will show a higher prevalence rates, and particularly with COVID, with long COVID, I think the numbers have like spiked as well.
Wow.
um,
Okay.
and no, like there's like the projections show that it will be even a higher problem in the world right now. Like there are different statistics across the world. For example, like in the US, it is said to be the 40% of the working age population is suffering from chronic pain. But of course, it also depends on how you measured it. Like if you define it as a pain that persists longer than 6 months, you have lower prevalence rates. If you define it as a shorter period, you may include more people. But
Mhm.
like in essence, it is a serious condition. It is an increasing problem, and it has very serious implications for people and organizations.
I've been reading your studies, the two we're going to talk about today, and one of them you talk about that this chronic pain and pain disability is a new frontier in effective and healthy organizations. Can you share a little bit about that? How you see the intersection of this with the workplace, and for those organizations that are looking to actively support their employees?
So, like, if you think of chronic pain, like it can have multiple, you know, um, sources, uh, but like chronic pain can be because of your biological tendencies. Like if you have a biological predisposition to feel pain or to experience certain diseases, you may have it. If you are living in terrible conditions, if you feel like stress, and if you're unable to cope with stress, chances are you may feel chronic pain because your nervous system cannot deal with so much like social threats. Or if you are working in a workplace that doesn't care about your health and well-being, if you are working in poor working conditions, you can also develop chronic pain. So if you think about the two of these three sources of pain, workplaces have serious degree of control over the social and
Mhm.
the work conditions aspect of it. I mean, they may not do much about your biological tendencies, but they may also create conditions to to develop chronic pain. So that's why we say it is an organizational problem. And also organizations pay for the cost of chronic pain. It's not just they are contributing to it, they're also paying the cost. So like in essence, we say that organizations are a stakeholder of chronic pain.
Okay. Well, certainly, I think as someone with lived experience myself with sciatic pain,
Hmm.
um, knowing that there are, it can impact your mental health, your productivity, your daily living, and certainly when you're and this is from lived experience too,
Hmm.
when you're in a heightened state of having it, flare up during a
Hmm.
period, and hopefully you can modulate it somehow. It really can impact everything that you do at work, which is around decision making and all those kinds of things. So the psychosocial factors in the
Exactly.
workplace are really important, I think, to manage. And maybe just share a little bit on that. The You have one of the studies called "Working Through Chronic Pain." So, and in your study, you mentioned that sort of this traditional or sort of legacy notion that people have illness or injury or pain, they go off work and they come back, healed and better, as
Mhm.
opposed to coming back and living and still working because our economic, our livelihood is tied to the workplace.
Mhm.
So people do come back to work with still in a state of, difficulty and struggling. That is, I think, one of the sort of when I was reading your articles, it was like, aha, yes, it made perfect sense. But then thinking about the number of people who are working in Canada who are suffering from chronic pain and what can just share a little bit about that study and maybe some of the details of it and what you did and what you found.
Of course. So, like, our initial point was as exactly as you said. Like, when we read the literature, by we, I say Dr. Kellaway and myself. So, it was a collaborative project. So, when we read the literature, we saw that the return to work literature talks about, like, return to work research talks about people taking time off from work and then coming back to work. And of course, like, there are tons of problems with that system as well, because like, employers and workers compensation boards are not happy with the lengthy disability leave time of employees, because when an employee is outside of the workforce for disability related reasons, and the primary, I've been reading the workers compensation board report. Seems like the number one reason is mental health related issues, and the second reason is chronic pain. So these are the two major,
Okay.
and they are by far, like, at the top of the list. The following conditions are much less prevalent. But these are the two major sources of disability related leaves in Canada. And when they are off work, it takes time for them to come back work. And if the disability time is, too long, employees are, like, unlikely to come back to work. So
Mhm.
this is an issue. But when you listen to the stories of employees, when we interview with employees, they say that we want to come back to work, we want to continue our lives as usual, but workplaces are not designed to support us in the condition that we are in. um so we said, like, and also not everyone is taking a disability leave. Like, for instance, I mean, I can give myself as an example. I also have, like, severe chronic pain. I don't know, listeners may not be seeing it now, but yeah, this is the hot water bottle that I live with. And I,
Osteomyelitis form
yeah.
also.
There you go.
Dr. Gulseren, that's like around my waist right now. Yeah.
And and we don't even report it to our employers. Like, they may not even be aware of it, but there's a very significant portion of employees are working with chronic pain. They go to work in pain, they work in pain, and they are silent about it. So we wanted to understand their perspectives, to understand what it is like to work in pain. So that's why we conducted this study. We interviewed with Canadian employees who self-identify as an employee with chronic pain. And in that particular study, we identified the teams that the common and important themes that came out of those interviews. And like, we had 8 teams, but I'm not sure if I will be able to recall all of them, but leadership was one of them for sure. Pain communication was another one. Pain's individualistic nature was another theme that I remember.
Did you find any interesting findings, sort of common themes like gender? Were there gender differences? Were the differences, could you connect the differences with the workplace perceptions or the workplace openness to, you know, um, EAP programs and other benefits that are offered? Sort of just, were there some linkages around I guess, the experiences of people?
Yeah, I mean, we did not have like many people. Like, our sample size was 13, so this was a qualitative study. So that's why I think that the gender was not a common theme, or it's not. If we had a bigger sample size, maybe we
Mm,
could find. I'm not sure, because literature says that women's disclosure of chronic pain is less heard by employers. So like, this is I think this tells me that gender can uh, play a role, but in our study we didn't find it. But
okay.
to me, the most surprising finding was that many of the employers that of the employees that we talked to had different sorts of resources and policies to help them with pain. And EFAP was one of them, like great benefits packages like chiropractic and like paid physiotherapy, and all those resources were available. But interestingly, the employees that we talked to mostly refer to the relationships at work. They use those resources, but sorry, that they utilize those resources, but that wasn't enough for them. Like, they were looking for something else.
Okay. Did Were there, I guess, moving on to the second one, which was this. Oh, I did have a question around sort of that intersection of, did they share, or in the next study you talked about, which is, equity and inclusion? Like, did they, that, I guess it was your second study around the pain disability.
Mhm.
How does equity and inclusion show up in some of your own research?
So when we say equity and inclusion, like, like, in research, at least, usually we talk about 3 things: race, gender, and disability. So, I
Okay.
mean, chronic pain can be a disabling, a source of disability. I don't want to say it is a disability itself. It can turn into a disability under, you know, uh, under different conditions. So if in our study, that our finding was that leaders had a role to play. So if and particularly, we found that transformational leadership was a good tool to reduce pain disability among people who have chronic pain. So if you have a leader who recognizes you as an individual, who inspires you, who challenges you, who helps you to find your own solutions, who talks about values and the importance of, like, purpose in life, um, under those leaders, if you're working with those leaders, chances are, even if you have chronic pain, you are less likely to experience pain disability. And we found that this is due
Amazing.
to improved mental health, like mental health conditions. Yes.
Okay. That's amazing that your leaders' perspective and when you look at the Canadian National Standard for Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace, and you look at civility, respect, psychological support, that they're openly and actively trying to help you grow as inside your organization, and that kind of attention to you as a person, that has such a huge impact on your experience at work and your level of pain, or your, whether you can thrive and have pain at the same time.
Exactly. And if
Yeah.
we combine the findings of the two studies that we talked about, like in the first one, we found that pain has an individualistic nature. So not
Can you
everyone
explain that a little bit?
of
Yeah.
course, it means that like not everyone experiences pain in the same way. And like
Okay.
we were lucky to find two people with similar backgrounds in our very small sample. Like they were at the same age, same job, same racial background, same like physical illness that they're experiencing, but the way they experience pain was entirely different. So, because as I said, pain is not only a biological condition, there are social and psychological factors in it. And in transformational leadership, in the second study that we examined, one of the key behaviors is of transformational leadership is individual consideration. Like, do I know you as an individual? Do I know your needs as an individual? Do I attend your needs as an individual employee? And that was one of the key behaviors of leaders that were really that could be helpful. We didn't look at specific behaviors, but we just theorized that this could be the driving force. And also meaning and purpose, I think, is like motivation. Uh, because if employees find meaning in their work, if they find a purpose
Mhm.
in their work, they want to stay in the workforce, they want to keep working because in that condition, work can be a therapy.
That's an interesting point, that work is a part of your therapy, versus the idea that you need to stay home and recuperate. That you can actually be in the workplace and be recuperating while you're at work. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. Tell a little bit about more, if you think about the behaviors that a leader could demonstrate that can be supportive of someone who can create these conditions. And you mentioned about individual consideration and some of those attributes and behaviors within transformational leadership. Can you share a little more about um, how, or some of your research and sort of some details on that, for our listeners, on how they could think practically in terms of what are the things that they could actively do that can support someone almost in that therapeutic supportive role?
Hmm. So when we talk about transformational leadership, like this was the model that we tested. So I'll start your question with that. So
Yeah.
transformational leadership has four groups of behaviors. So one of them is idealized influence. So talking about values and prioritizing the collective well-being and collective's interests over personal interests. So if we talk about its translation to chronic pain, it could be something like I need to keep working for my group. Like this is not just me, but I am part of a larger group. People depend on me, and this is I shouldn't be selfish. I should consider the like this could be one translation. And also like the idealized influence behavior talks about moral and ethical side of it. So the second behavior is inspirational motivation. This is talking about a positive future. So again, its translation in the chronic pain context can be that, hey, look, you may be experiencing pain at the moment, but future is bright. You will get through this. Or even if you don't get through this, it will become less of an issue in your life. There, good things are waiting for you. That there, a positive future ahead. So inspiring employees to see future as something to look forward to. The third behavior is, as I said, individualized consideration. So what do you need from me? How can I help you? Like, I know that you're in pain. Are you in pain today? Or like, oh, wait, maybe I can assign this task to your colleague because you may not be able to do it because of your condition, but someone else can do it for you. Things like that. And the last behavior is intellectual stimulation. This is about
Mm.
challenging the person to think outside of the box. So again, in the chronic pain condition, this could be, okay, maybe you're having difficulties because of your pain, but we can come up with a new solution that we haven't thought of before. And in most cases, this is like, I see this as a part of like flexibility. um, if your workplace provides flexible work options, you go and figure out your own solution, which is not in the book, but you just, come up with your own unique way. So, intellectual stimulation is about, challenging the status quo and encouraging the employee to find innovative ways of doing work.
That's awesome. So, as you were talking about that transformational leadership and psychological safety, maybe what I also like our guests to explore, which is sort of the definition of psychological safety. And as you were saying that, I can see the alignment, but I'd love you to explore a little bit of how you think about psychological safety in some of the work in exploring pain at work.
hmm This is actually a very good question because, like, even though we, as researchers, we are looking at, like, we are zooming in specific relationships that might be seem like too detailed, too small from the outside, from the practical world. If we just step back and look at the big picture, we see that good things are you know um, they go together. Like positives beget positives, negatives beget negatives. So, psychological safety is defined as feeling safe to speak about your mind. I will share what I think, and my teams, and this is a team level
Mhm.
construct. So I will say what I think, and my team members will not judge me. They will not, punish me. They will listen, and they will make the best efforts to understand me. So this is, in a nutshell, I think this is the definition of psychological safety. And in chronic pain or in transformational leadership context, this is like, my leader will not judge me. My teammates will not judge me. If I am in pain, I can share that I am in pain and they will just understand me. Or if I think that, certain way of doing things are interfering with my condition, or my condition is interfering with these, ways of doing work, I will feel safe to share my mind, to speak my mind. This is what I understand from psychological safety.
You've, thank you for that. That's fabulous. You talked about work design, sort of in the psychosocial factors, and then psychological safety as an outcome that the leader can create so that people feel safe to be able to share that they're in pain and they want to create like an environment where they can actually continue to work productively, and to do that together with your leader. So, and flexibility is one of the biggest, I think, probably the biggest levers we have in that, and
hmm
that leaders who can start to think more flexibly and creatively about what's possible
hmm
to continue to enable someone to be productive and to do, what they need to do. I love the idea of not judging me. Did you explore sort of some of your background and understanding about the stigma around pain and about types of pain in the workplace? Maybe just share a little bit about that, because I think about I think we're getting better in the workplaces, more
hmm
openness about what we can talk about and what we can share without judgment and feeling safe to do so. But we also know that from a mental health perspective, there's still a lot of stigma around certain kinds of things in sharing. And did you find that in pain specifically? Are there certain kinds of pain that that there might be more stigma around or less stigma in some of your work and your research?
So, like, I haven't studied this myself, but when I read the research that is out there on this topic, I see two types of pain. Two types of stigma. Others stigmatizing you because you have pain, or self-stigmatization. You think that others are judging you because you have
Mm-hmm.
pain. So you are just stigmatizing your own condition. And we also know that when the pain is associated with physical conditions, uh, it is easier to communicate and it's also easier for others to accept. But if you have an invisible condition or if you are experiencing a primary type of pain, I mean, the pain as a disease itself, it is hard to show where in your body you have the pain. It's hard to explain and it's hard for others to understand. And this is, I think, can be more stigmatized. And I remember I tell this story all the time because this is hilarious. When I first started studying chronic pain, Lady Gaga was going to give a concert and she canceled it because she had chronic pain and she didn't feel like she could, give the whole concert. And this is a physically like demanding work, right? Um, and they had to return the tickets and etc. Refund the tickets. And people were furious about it in the social media. They were like, she's just making this up. This is, unbelievable. We don't accept it. I made my plans according to it. I mean, think about this in two perspectives. Like on the one hand, you are someone from the audience who just, okay, you paid, but you're just there to enjoy an hour or two. And there's also a person who is struggling with pain, who is unable to entertain you in the time that you wanted, and you are blaming her for making things up.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this is, in a way, this is an exaggerated picture, but this is real, and this is what happens in organizations. Like, maybe, one of your employees is unable to take customer calls for an hour or so. What happens? Like, the world doesn't stop, but for that person, answering those phone calls in the exact time that you designated to them, allocated to them, maybe too difficult to like it's their life, their health. So yeah, this story comes to my mind when we talk about stigma.
Hi listeners, Jason here. We hope you're enjoying this latest podcast episode. Now, if you're like Joelle, Alicia and myself and enjoy learning from the best, then the Flourish DX Academy is for you. The Academy includes free e-learning courses on the ISO 45003 standard for psychological health and safety at work, and associated topics such as how to conduct a psychosocial risk assessment and how to create the business case for psych health and safety. All courses feature high-quality videos, downloadable resources, multi-choice questions, and a downloadable training certificate on completion. Take your learning to the next level with all Flourish DX Academy courses included within the Flourish DX mobile app. Select podcast episodes from the Psych Health and Safety podcast and sister podcasts from Canada and the USA are also included. Get started with Flourish DX for free at www.flourishdx.com/get-started. That's www.flourishdx.com/get-started. Now back to this episode.
I love that story. I think it's the challenge, I think, for many people is in the moment almost believing what is invisible or not concrete to them. Sometimes if it's not concrete and if we aren't experiencing it. Interestingly, my daughter had sent me a little text a few weeks ago. Here, I'm sharing this on Canadian podcast. She'll love this. She'll absolutely love this. But that idea that for some people, this is exactly that that notion, which is this. For some people, they cannot believe what they don't experience themselves in the moment. And we are having a little bit of a conversation back and forth around that. And what would you suggest for leaders who, obviously, some of these conditions are invisible. Some of these conditions are, as you say, that idea of this as the primary. It's a condition that is because of the pain is the health condition versus from an injury specifically. And in many ways, we've come a long distance for understanding mental health and also our physical limitations and pain. And yet we still have that struggle of unbelieving what we can't see. How can you help leaders think through some of that, I guess, and how they could work with that and I guess believe people when they are sharing, this thing that they can't see? And I guess that's a really big question, Dr. Gulseren.
I think you already answered it in your question. So believing it, like this is the key. First
Yeah.
of all, being aware that this is very common. So like we are talking about like 20% in the US, we're talking about 40% of the workforce suffering
It's
from
huge.
chronic pain. And there are people who are not also like who don't disclose, like they're unclosed, like they're closeted people as well. So first, I think leaders, please know that, 1 in every 5 people, at least in your team, is suffering from chronic pain. So you cannot get through, like the very first reaction that, comes to mind of employers, especially when we talk about disabilities, is to get rid of the person, which by the way is prohibited by the human rights law in Canada. But they find, other excuses to let the person with the disability go. But you cannot get rid of 20% of your workforce. Like this is economically unfeasible. This is impossible. And also like we are experiencing a huge skill gap in Canadian workforce and in the world in general as well. So these people have valuable skills. So I think the first story, the first message is that these people, there are too many of these people. They are valuable people. So we need to like understand, acknowledge that this is an issue that we need to work on without, like, this is not something that we can get rid of. Second, if a person is disclosing their pain to you, chances are they are in pain. So believe them, because if they didn't need your support, they wouldn't disclose it. Like, why would I make up? Like, if they are, coming up with a request, this tells me that this person needs the support, like regardless of what you think the actual condition is. So my second recommendation would be to believe. And also we now, in our research, we see that this is beyond the policies. This is beyond the structured form of the workplace. Chronic pain needs attention through organizational behavior solutions as well. So your behaviors, your interactions, how you listen to them, how you talk to them, that makes a huge difference. So this is not, when I mean, I imagine a scenario when an employee in pain discloses their pain to their leader, and the first thing my, at least, leader would say that, I need to talk to HR about this. But this is beyond HR. This is not HR's problem. Yes,
Okay.
they have a role to play as well, but you also, as an individual, have a role to play, and HR cannot answer that. So you need to and we learned that positive leadership approaches can undo the negative effects of pain.
I think you're challenging leaders to dig in and understand more about this based on its prevalence and the impact it has from a human perspective, but also on the workplace. I know that you work with, or you have a lot of students that you're working with, and they have some projects that are all around these things. And you have a podcast yourself, which
Mhm.
is the OHS project,
Yes,
I
the
believe it's
OHS
called.
project. Yeah.
Project. Maybe share a little bit about that, because you had shared before that you have that students have created resources that are there, and I think that that might be a great resource for organizational leaders, anyone who is interested in the obviously workplace pain in the workplace, but also other topics as well. Share a little bit about that
Oh,
initiative.
thank you for bringing this up. So, our initiative is called the OHS Project, and the website is the ohsproject.ca. So this is actually this started when I first started teaching occupational health and safety. So I was looking for case studies, I was looking for exercises to use in my classes, and there weren't many available, or the ones that were available were not, they weren't in one place. You really needed to dig through the internet, which
Yes.
is
So the literature and the internet. So you had to become a researcher, like as you are, but for the practitioner or a supervisor or a manager inside an organization who may not have all of those,
time.
the research skills and the time.
Yeah. So that's, that was the inspiration behind this project. So, and I also did not want my students to be the receivers of occupational health and safety knowledge, but I wanted them to produce something as well. So, right now at the ohsproject.ca, we have different types of resources for people who would like to learn more about occupational health and safety. So my students interview real employees, real occupational health and safety issues. They talk to human resources managers, they talk to supervisors, they talk to employees about an occupational health and safety challenge that they experience in the workplace, and they write a very short case study based on that. And there are like a number of discussion questions. So we envisioned it as a tool that could be used in training context.
Awesome.
And it is like the topics vary from bullying to disabilities to leadership to um, stress, everything that can be under the umbrella of occupational health and safety. And now actually I will just talk to this person after recording this podcast. We hired an editor for the OHS project.ca, so he will start adding new resources, and one of them will be movie analysis. So the occupational health and safety issues that took place in the movies, and they reviewed the issue, they reviewed the literature on the topic, they analyzed the movie, and they asked a number of discussion questions. And believe it or not, uh, many of the movies that we know today talk about occupational health and safety to some degree.
I love that. I love that. That makes it so accessible and interesting, I think, for people. Not that all the other topics aren't, because the other topics are near and dear to your heart and mine. But I love that sort of take and theme around that to explore that. That is something that I will actually be watching that too. I'm going to go in and get that and have a look at that. That sounds great.
I'll definitely let you know.
That is student creativity at its best. I think when you unleash that creativity about these resources for people and making them accessible and helpful and practical,
Yeah.
because workplace leaders are stretched for time. Supervisors and managers, particularly, they are the peanut butter in the sandwich, really, in many ways.
Mhm.
So they have teams and people who are reporting to them, and then they have people they report to. So I always think
Mhm.
that managers and supervisors inside organizations, that is where you should put your $1.
Yep.
If you have $1 of investment in leadership development and self-awareness and all of those very specific psychological health and safety based behaviors and practices and integrating that kind of skill and ability, I'd put my $1 there. They need it the most. Sure, everyone else in the organization needs it, but it's really those supervisors, anyone who has people that they're trying to work with every day and lead. It's a tough job. It is a
It
tough
is.
job.
It is funny
Um,
that you brought up the $1 question because my colleagues Steve Granger, he's at Concordia University, and
okay.
Nick Turner and Alyssa Grokat, they actually answered this question in a research paper. It was a next best dollar question. So if you
Oh,
had one additional dollar, how would you spend it on safety? And they mostly looked at it
oh.
from HR practices more than leadership. But yeah, it's a very interesting paper.
Oh, I'm going to read that too. This has been a fabulous. I have a whole list now. I have a whole list of things that I need to
Oh
do
yeah.
after this. But it is true, I think, because it is that middle, kind of the messy middle in everything. It is that they have the biggest job to do. And, I think the stat is about 70% of a supervisor's workday is helping to manage the relationships, like helping their team in terms of their interrelationships with others. So there's a lot of sort of knowledge and skills and ability and curiosity and transformational leadership qualities that need to be accessed and have fluency in to be effective in that job today. It's a very stressful, I think, stress literacy as well, and the idea of learning more about pain and pain management in organizations as well. Maybe share. I know that you have a couple of other studies. Are they also coming out that you and I had talked about? Are they also in the area of pain management, or are they in some additional areas that you have coming up?
Well, I mean, I am a part of lots of different projects. My major, I use most of my time on chronic pain related projects, and now we have the paper that I talked about, transformation leadership and pain disability, is one of the ones in the making. And I also, with my colleagues, Joe McParland from Glasgow Caledonian University, and Mino Salzele, she is a PhD student in our school. We are working on to understand how organizational justice plays out in the context of chronic pain, because again, chronic pain is a type of disability, or is a leading source of disability, and people may have different people with chronic pain may have different understandings of organizational justice. They may have different needs and expectations. And also, like, having a disability itself may feel unjust if you look at from a broader perspective. So we are working on it. We just finished our data collection, and we will analyze our data to see how people with chronic pain define organizational justice. um, I just finished a quick write-up with my colleague Jana Liubliuk from Simon Fraser University on work breaks and how they impact well-being and
Okay.
performance. Yeah, and
I
like, apart from occupational health and safety, I am at the moment working on a manuscript on unpredictability bias. And I think it has significant implications for occupational health and safety, but it's not just an occupational health and safety issue. So with my colleague Winnie Shen from York University, we are proposing that unpredictability is actually something that we experience because we avoid thinking about problems.
Okay. Can you share a little bit more about that? So, what is unpredictability bias?
Okay,
Like,
so
could you define it just a little bit? And then I'm going to swoop back to organizational justice
mhm,
as well. So, just that one first. Just to, I think I understand it, but I just wanted you to share a little bit more about what that
of course.
unpredictable. Because we talk about bias a lot when we're talking about equity and leadership behaviors and things like that. To be self aware and understand your own bias. So maybe share a little bit about that.
Yes, and I can actually explain this using an occupational health and safety example. So, unpredictability bias is a term that we are coining based on a number of different theories, drawing on different theories, and one of them is self-fulfilling prophecy. So, if you think something negative will happen to you, you behave in such a way that something negative happens to you because you anticipate for it. So in unpredictability bias, we define, so like world is full of uncertainties. At the moment, we don't know what the climate change will result in. We don't know what AI will, what kind of a change AI will make in the workplace, or like we don't know when the next pandemic is and how it will occur. So there are lots of uncertainties. Most of them are about the future. And to prepare them, we try to make predictions about their influences, right? In health and safety context, you for instance, you prepare for disasters. You just imagine what the next disaster could be. You prepare for it, and in a way, you try to make a prediction. And then your all your planning is based on your prediction. But there are times when, even though there is, in people, when there are uncertainties, there are two actions that people take. We either can seek more information to reduce the uncertainty, or we avoid. So unpredictability bias is about the avoidance route. So
Okay.
sometimes we just don't want to predict. We just don't want to learn more about the issue. We avoid, and when it happens, we see them. It come across as a surprise. But like if we go back, maybe this was something that we could have predicted, but we avoided.
Right. That shows up, I think, from a psychological health and safety perspective, also when we're thinking about prevention. So
Exactly.
thinking about all of the work we can do in psych health and safety on the prevention side. So how are we assessing a particular factor and trying to put things in place to mitigate its impact, and then because basically we are trying to predict what's going to happen and then mitigate that to ensure that I guess the worst case scenario does not happen. So I can see how that would really be interesting and connected to some of the prevention work in psychological health and safety as well.
Exactly. Or
Yeah.
safety accidents, like workplace accidents, incidents.
Yes.
And when we talk about them, we say that these are things that are preventable. So this is where the prevention piece comes in. Yeah.
Nice. Organizational justice, and I had referenced earlier about inclusion or fairness and
Mhm.
those kinds of things in the workplace. So, a little bit of what is organizational justice, and maybe for our listeners to define what that is and
Mhm.
how it connects into the workplace.
Mhm. So organizational justice is about how fair you perceive your workplaces, and it has three types. One of them is distributional justice. So how fair the resources and outcomes are distributed in your workplace. So this can be, your salary, for instance, can be you know an outcome, and like distribution of compensation could be a part of distributional justice. The second one
Mm.
is procedural justice, which is more complex and more abstract, if you ask me. It is about the fairness perception of fairness of uh, policies and procedures. It is not about the salary, it's about how your salary is calculated, or how it is, those decisions are made. um, for instance, you and I may not, and I'm giving this salary example, but it can be about anything and everything, basically. But you and I may have different salaries, but if you are more experienced, and if you have more education, and I may perceive the procedure as fair, and I can say that there's procedural fairness, and that's why the outcomes are different. And the third one is interactional justice. And we haven't analyzed the data, but I mean, I personally anticipate that this is where we will find most of the participant data in. So interactional justice about the fairness of relationships. Are you,
Okay.
yeah, like nepotism, for instance, like do you
Yeah.
play the favorites, or do you treat my colleague, more positively than how you treat me? Like this is the interactional justice piece.
That the I love that. Okay, that just makes me want to go down the research bunny trail of that to understand that. Because I think all of us experience in the workplace different levels of fairness, and how that plays out for us is obviously our own perspective. But raising the consciousness in workplaces of thinking about these issues and thinking about how that makes that actually ties into psychological safety as well. So,
Mhm.
kind of your level of understanding of fairness will probably might be a predictor. Yeah, I'm not a
Mhm.
researcher, Dr. Gulseren, so I'm not that person, but I'm just thinking in my own thinking it through whether I feel comfortable sharing something if I have understood that there is different treatment for different people inside an organization,
Exactly.
then my level of safety, that maybe it's if I'm in a particular position, my safety might be quite low, or it could be quite high. And so I'm actually encouraged to share because there is a perceived fairness and everybody's ideas are valued. One person's ideas are not more valuable than another's in a team. All of those things, I can see how the application can be on a team level.
Mhm.
And for a workplace leader thinking about that, how that's playing out and how they are helping to create the most positive,
And think, for
conditions.
instance, you have chronic pain, you have like the equity piece is not about equality, right?
No.
Like equity means that we have different needs, and we come from different backgrounds, and we may have like different types of supports. So in the interactional, or like in organizational justice in general, if you have chronic pain, you may go and ask your supervisor to, um, to offer some flexible working options for you. Maybe you can go home earlier. And if you also don't need to have to disclose your condition to everyone in the workplace. You just need to like to be able to receive accommodation. The law requires that you disclose it, and just the need, even not the condition, just the need that you have. And what does your colleague think when you go home early, and when
Mhm.
there's no explanation? Like they may think that the supervisor may be playing favorites. This is just, one
Right.
example of it.
Yeah, it is a conversation I have with many organizations around the notion of fairness or perceived unfairness. And over the last couple of years, it's been a big conversation in some of the psychological health and safety
Hmm.
conversations I'm having. So I'm really looking forward to that work. Thank you so much for all that you've shared today and given me all kinds of pieces for me to think about and do a bit more exploring around, and hopefully for our listeners as well. And I think based on that you have these new projects coming to fruition, that we can have you back maybe in the fall and or some other time to share a little bit more about some of the findings of those, because I think those would really support leaders who are looking to move towards some of that transformational leadership behavior and practices and thinking that you shared as well. Do you have any final advice for workplace leaders around, the importance of understanding pain and chronic pain in the workplace?
Hmm. Uh, yes, I think it's just, please, no, please, like, educate yourself on the issue of chronic pain. You may think that this, you may overlook it because you don't have enough information about it. So be aware, be educated on this issue. Believe when your employees disclose their pain, because disclosure is not an easy behavior itself. If they make the effort to disclose their needs, that means that might really need your support. And also positivity. So leadership is about inspiration. It should be about inspiration. It should be about being a positive role model, because many leaders still think that, correctional behaviors are effective, but our research time and time after shows that it's not about correcting the others' behaviors, it's about inspiring others. So if you are a positive role model, if you are an inspirational leader, if you are, a supportive person, they will correct themselves. They will try to, make their best to to please you. They would want to keep the positive relationship going. So there's social exchange. So like
Mhm.
in general, I think my overall recommendation for all leaders is to be the positive role model
And keep learning. I
and
think
keep learning.
Dr. Gulseren, that's, I think, the advice there. Keep learning. There is so much to learn. So the idea that, it's another thing on leaders' plates is also part of the conversation sometimes. But the research is pretty clear that if you can reduce, create more psychological health and safety outcomes, then you will actually create more space in your workday as well, because you're going to be reducing some of the challenges for employees, and hopefully over time, not maybe in the short term, but over the long term, you can create better working conditions, and with redesign and some of these other sharing some of the other characteristics and information you shared today. So thanks for joining us, and I appreciate it. How can people reach out and connect with you? And if they have more questions or want to sort of learn more about some of the research and some of the work you do?
Of course. My I mean, I can leave my email and my faculty profile. This is usually where I post most of my new research as they come. I also have a Psychology Today column under my name, where I share the practical aspects of the research that I'm doing or the research that I'm reading. So I try to be active there. I also want to, take this opportunity to thank you, Kim, because the work that you are doing is very important, like knowledge translation, knowledge mobilization. And I know that you are making real effort to understand, to read research and to understand it, and to translate it into practice. So this is, you know, a tremendously important job, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for your work.
Thanks for that. It is. It's all parts of the. I will never be an academic. What I can be is a pracademic. I can just adjacent to your work, so that I can help in that you're translating it as well, and I can just be a part of that. So it is definitely a diverse and team effort. So thanks for that. I appreciate that. And thanks everyone for listening. And you can find Hope You Stay and explore more of the episodes for Psych Health and Safety in Canada. You can reach out to me at 13factors.ca, and also on LinkedIn. I'm always interested in connecting with you. And if you have a topic, an idea you want to explore in psychological health and safety and workplace occupational health and safety, please reach out to me there. And tune back in and keep checking for, we do these podcasts as regularly as we can, and post and release them once a week or once every couple of weeks. So check back to wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks, and until next time.
You've been listening to the Psych Health and Safety Canada podcast. To stay up to date with the best content on workplace mental health in North America, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and join the Flourish DX community at www.flourishdx.com.